Brilliant. So, welcome the one and only Tamara Alferoff to our interview on the rise of the feminine today for Silver Tent TV. And we start off by streaming live into the Silver Tent. So it would be lovely if people are watching this live, and then the recording will be put up onto our Silver Tent TV YouTube channel. So welcome, Tamara. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Likewise, Francesca.
So it's been a long time. You've been with the Silver Tent for so long. I can't even remember when you turned up. It's like you feel such a founding member of the community, and I've wanted to interview you for a very long time. And you know, I was tuning in earlier, and the sense that I was getting about you is that you know so much. You've lived through so much. So you were born just before the Second World War. You've lived through rationing. I believe that your mum brought you up on a vegetarian diet when that was very rare. Yes. You say to me that your father taught you to breathe, and that you lived amongst mountain climbers, and you knew and climbed with some of the huge names of mountaineers, which just blows me away. And I also get this feeling that, you know, whether we were to talk about religion or politics or science or how the world started, somehow you'd have an understanding of each facet of that. So I see your wisdom as being kind of rounded, like 360 degrees of wisdom. And as you know, and most people watching this know, I set up the Silver Tent to really help us women and myself learn and understand that we're growing into being wise elder women with wisdom worth sharing. But you you're kind of the best illustration of a wise elder woman with wisdom worth sharing. And yes, I wondered how you feel about that. Do you feel like you're a wise elder woman with wisdom worth sharing?
Some of the time, Francesca. Sometimes I'm still a little sister. I was the youngest of three girls, and I still feel like the little sister in many ways. Yes, but I realize I've actually been realizing just exactly how much I do know, because I'm, you know, somebody's got an ache in the knee, I've got a remedy for them. Somebody's, you know, trouble with a relationship, I tell you, like, whatever it is, you want to plant a tree, I'll tell you how to do it. It's like, I think, yeah, so I think I'm realizing just exactly what a wealth of experience I've had in my life, starting from day one, actually. And I'm interested now to notice that many people are going back to the old ways and discovering, for example, people are now being taught to breathe properly. You know, breathing is the next big thing, or grounding, you know. My granny, my wonderful, amazing granny, who's I have to thank for so much, well, she would never wear rubber-soled shoes. She had to have leather soles. I don't know if you're not old enough to remember that when all shoes were leather soled. You had the inner leather sole, and then you had the outer leather sole, which was thick. And then the heel had 3 or 4 layers of leather to make it a heel. You know, it's like that was my granny. She wouldn't wear anything but leather because she knew and said aloud that she interfered with the magnetism of the earth.
Wow.
And that was, you know, 100 years ago, she knew these things. Yeah. Oh. So yes, I mean, I was gifted so much wisdom just by osmosis, you know, just by the way I was brought up. Yeah. And I think what now people call naturopathy, which is actually being started to be criminalized in various countries in the world, you know, sadly, it's just it just had a massive resurgence. You know, nature cure is what I was taught to call it. Then it became naturopathy and natural medicine, and so it evolved and taken off in such a huge way. And what I see now is people discovering, we have just discovered grounding. We have just realized that rosemary can be helpful with Alzheimer's. I was like, do you know why rosemary is called rosemary for remembrance?
No.
Because it helps the memory. Rosemary, the herb rosemary, it helps memory. It stimulates memory. And they're discovering, scientists are now discovering that. Anyway, yes, I'm blabbing on a bit. So I do realize that I have a very broad spectrum of knowledge. And I sometimes think I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. But there are some things I can't excel at, I think.
I think you do. Yes,
Yeah.
that was when I was really tuning into you before we started. I didn't get that concept at all, that you were like you knew a little about a lot. I didn't get that sense at all. I really get the sense of that you've got this breadth of wisdom and a depth of wisdom. And I'm just really drawn to asking if you'd share a little like snapshot of your childhood, maybe a snapshot of where you feel you really became you in, like what really plugged you into you, kind of thing.
It's very interesting looking back and realizing now I'm much older, things that I hadn't realized when I was like 20 years ago even. So I was raised, as I said, in a natural way. And my mum would put us outdoors in the pram, well wrapped up, and under trees to be entertained by the tree movement of leaves, but also in the sun, if it was warm, outside naked. And I spent a lot of my childhood running around in the garden completely naked with a big stick herding the goats and ducks and geese and all the livestock that we had around. So I had a paradise to live in as a child. In spite of the fact there was war going on, it didn't touch us very much. We lived in a big rambling old freezing cold stone house in the middle of countryside in the Lake District, South Lakes, outside, about 3 miles from the nearest town, about 1/4 of a mile from the nearest house neighbor. And down the lane were the farmers who lived in the very old-fashioned way as well. So I learned a lot from them as well. A little anecdote that might amuse you is that the old farmers, old Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Thompson. There were the younger Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, but the older Mr. Thompson's father. They lived as they had lived 100 years before. They lived in an old-fashioned way for them, right? So that couple used to, in the morning, they would link hands and go out of the kitchen back door, just across a little bit of the field into a cabin that was set on a little bit of a rise. And there they would sit together on an open bench, a bench with 2 holes where they did their toilet together. And, the image of that is just so charming, like, and that was real. That was real for them. That's how they lived. It wasn't a fairy tale. It's not an anecdote to be amusing about, Darby and Joan type couple. That was their life. And they lived a hard life and a farmer's life. It's not an easy life, although the countryside there is quite gentle, with quite gentle land. So I grew up with, crowds of chickens and ducks and geese and guinea fowl and hens and bantams, and Bantycock was very fierce. And we had a little herd of goats, flock of chickens, herd of goats, white goats. And I didn't like the big ones, but the little white kids were my playmates, and they are so amusing and they love to play. I would play with those for hours. But the reason why I was raised vegetarian was because my family, originally, my father wanted to start a smallholding. I won't go into his background because that's quite complex, but he had a passion for animals, passion for natural way of life, and a passion for the country. And he wanted animals. And so he built a duck pond, right? We had 2 duck ponds. We had 1 pond for the ducks and 1 pond for us. And a stream running through both of them. And I used to sail a little aluminium bath on my on my pond. But my father had all these animals, and then we gave them all names. Then he discovered he couldn't possibly eat them, so we became vegetarian. So but my mum had a vegetarian guest house all through the war years, all through, for 25 years or more, until I left home for university, basically. So that was my background. And, I feel very gifted. I've seen kids being born as a child, and rescued baby moorhens being swept away down the stream, and had a pony, and my pony was my best friend for a long time. I went everywhere on a bicycle, go fix my own bicycle, fix my own pony, all of that. So it was a gifted childhood. My two older sisters, quite a lot older than me, and I think I was privileged in a way, because they were away at boarding school. And I, from age about 9, and it was the thing, everybody went to boarding school in those days who could, and it was an alternative boarding school, which you didn't have to go to lessons at all, ever. And everybody swam naked, including the staff. It's like, it was one of the big progressives. There were 5 progressives, and that was one of them. So, but I was unhappy. And I concluded that I was worried about my mum being on her own without me, because we were very close. Me and my sisters being away, mum and I were very close and remained close all my life. So they took me home, and I was at home with my mum and went to the local high school. So that's my schooling, my background.
I can so see the little girl in you. I can just, you've got such a wonderful joie de vivre and childlike quality that just bubbles through. And when you describe, herding the goats with your stick, I can so see that. And it's really enchanting. And I'd love people to know a little bit about the climbing, because one of the other things that came through for me is that I feel like you have this confidence, that you have confidence in your wisdom, confidence to navigate the world, whatever it kind of throws at you, and confidence in your own body. And I wondered how much of that came from being a climber.
Well, I think climbing was something I just did. I mean, living in the country, I was out by myself all day long sometimes. No, my mum never chased after me or worried or said, be careful or anything. I was given free rein to roam about. I could be out all day in my pony or my bicycle, which was wonderful, actually. So I just adventured around and created my own amusements. And I would climb. There was a slanting rock. I can remember it to this day. It had seams across. A big slanting rock. It was about 10 feet wide, slightly slanting. And I didn't climb that one, but I became passionate about rocks then, and up close and personal with rocks, like this close with rocks, and all the tiny little lichens and mosses and crevices and fungi and whatever was growing on the rock surface, minute. And yes, so I grew up with plants and birds, and I knew all the birds, I knew all the plants, all the herbs and what they used for. But climbing, I was a tree climber. There was a big forest-sized beech tree just over the wall in our field. We had some fields, and over the stone wall, I would climb up the stone wall onto the lower branch of the beech, and then climb all the way to the top, well, near to the top. And it was one of those big, massive, great beech trees. The trunk, trunks of massive, great trunk like an elephant, silver grey they are, beautiful. And then the branches going off. But the beech trees grow in a nice way, because they have a branch there and another one there and another one there and another one there, and you can go around like a staircase until you get high enough. And then I used to sit there for hours, hours, just sitting up in the tree, looking out through the leaves. Yeah, I still love beech trees. Yeah. And now you don't get it, but the beech tree used to produce very tasty little nuts. And I think they've sort of given up on that, because I don't know why. I haven't found them lately. Little brown nuts in their little green little, like an elf cap. Yeah. Of course we had fairies as well. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask you, like, how did you have a dialogue with the different aspects of nature?
Well, different aspects of nature. I don't know really. I don't know that I had a dialogue with that. I didn't meet fairies and have conversations with them I may have done, I don't remember actually. But I remember I saw auras as a child and I flew. I used to practice flying downstairs until my mum came out and saw me at the top of the stairs about to launch, and she was frightened, so I stopped flying.
Do you sorry, stuttering here. Do you, you jumped, or did you actually?
No, I flew. I would, I had to calculate the angle by which I would not bang my head on the cross of the landing.
So you did actually fly down the stairs.
Apparently. I can't verify that though, Francesca. I'm sorry.
I just love it. I could spend the whole hour talking about your childhood, but I guess we ought to move on a bit. And there was a question, and I'm sure that everybody would love to hear the answer to this one, because honestly, it's totally enchanting hearing your stories of growing up, and just the visual way you describe them, just wonderful. And I was thinking how awesome I find you, and wondered, what do you love most about yourself?
Well, you asked, yeah, it's sort of, I'm wondering about that. And I did a little bit of a stern response to somebody who spoke about self-love, and I actually delivered a talk to a group that I belong to about the impossibility of self-love, because who is doing the loving, of what? I mean, so it's a bit of a scramble for the mind. I won't use rude words on this. Yeah, so the mind gets a bit muddled when you say self-love, or loves. What do you love about yourself? But I was thinking about that question, and I suppose appreciate about myself is my curiosity, my adventurous spirit, my curiosity, and my ability to grow and change. I haven't stopped growing and changing, and I'm noticing lately massive great changes in a lot of what I'm doing, and intentions of how I live and my work, and because I'm still working. Yeah, so I've noticed big changes afoot.
I mean, you're kind of still doing everything, aren't you? Not just working. I mean, when you talk sometimes about your schedule, and you're flying here, and then you're flying there, and then you're going to be running this retreat and this course, and then you're doing something online, and I think, like, so I'm coming up to 68, and you're early 80s, aren't you? Very early 80s. Is that right?
I'll be 80. Well, let me see. It's oh yeah, I'll be 85 quite soon. In October.
Wow, it was just the other day you were 80, Tamara. I don't know where those 5 years
well
were.
time don't poof. Yes, I mean, yeah.
Time flies as fast as you going down the stairs, I think. Yes, and it's like, if I did your schedule, I'd never make it to 85. Right. I get tired just hearing about it. You've got the most incredible amount of stamina, and that awes me. I'd love to have that kind of stamina. So yes, you're still working, but you're doing so many still things at your beautiful age.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds as if I'm running around frantically. I'm not actually. It just happens that 2 or 3 things are backed up against each other that I have committed to, and it sounds like, oh yeah, I'm home for a day and then I'm off to sort of Italy. Well, yeah, that happened, but that's rare. I'm quite a homebody.
Are you?
I am. I'm a Scorpio. Late October is my birthday, but I have Cancer rising, which is very much the homebody. Wanting to bring people in, make sure the home is secure and lovely, and so Yeah, so I have the two sort of elements, because Scorpio is all out there exploring and being the eagle, and looking everywhere, and Cancer is like, yeah, let's do the washing up. Like,
Wow, no wonder I've got this sense of the 360 degrees of you. There's I think you're multifaceted. I like that word, faceted.
yeah, yes, yes.
And I've often found when we've spent any time together, when I've been listening to you, that you often talk about like the feminine archetypes. And I was pondering earlier about this patriarchal society that we've lived in for so long, and I wondered about this idea of the rise of the feminine. After all, I called this interview, The Rise of the Feminine.
Yes, you did, yes.
I wanted to ask you if you feel that there is a change coming. Are we shifting into a more feminine way of being on our planet and in our society? And what does the rise of the feminine actually mean?
Gosh, it's a massive, great question, isn't it? And my experience is that my world was very, very patriarchal. Boys were boys and did their thing, and girls were girls and weren't supposed to. I mean, but I was a rebel. I was always a rebel from the start. I was, my mum taught me to be independent and self-directed, I think, and I admire that. She was able to do that all through the war years. I mean, I don't run around the countryside without, I was well looked after. Absolutely well looked after as a child. I had special looking after, I think. Really appreciate that. But at the same time, I developed this independent streak, and I would never take anything for granted. So when I was at school, a high school, I became a sort of rebel. Because I was very bright, I was boosted up a couple of years, and my classmates would egg me on to ask the challenging questions of the Bible scriptures teacher. Like, Miss, what's big app mean? It's like, and she actually loved it, because most of her classes would just sit there bored stiff listening to her spout about the Bible, but I was actually interested, and she got to talk a bit more and think about it and engage, and I was engaged. So I was a bit mischievous, but at the same time, it worked well for me. Yeah. But I always rebelled, and I never followed the rules about girls' behavior. I won't go into too much detail about that, but I was a bit of a wild thing. The minute I left home and went to university, I had lots and lots of boyfriends, and of all sorts of boyfriends. There were quite a number of wonderful young Americans when they come over for their very first experience in Britain. They'd come by the big ships, Cunard liners, with their massive great trunks. So they were having a year of university, or had longer than that. But there were all sorts of other people. There were Australian dentists studying in dentistry in Edinburgh, and doctors, surgery, studying surgery, and the veterinary college is famous in Edinburgh. And the education in Edinburgh was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, the best. And I loved it there. And I'm thinking of relocating part of the time back to Edinburgh, actually. So that's part of my adventurous spirit is coming out again, back to Scotland. So I've forgotten what the question was, but
Would you
something
like
about dear what?
About do you feel that the patriarchy is
yes, I do. So I think I was pioneering the shift myself, because I they called it free love, in the 50s or 60s, as sort of free love and all that hippie stuff. I didn't wait for that. I didn't wait for it to be called something. I just lived my life and the way I saw fit, and some disapproved and some didn't. It was I never much bothered about people disapproving. Yeah, I married a wild foreign artist, only because I was second time pregnant with him. So I didn't actually want to get married, but I was advised, and that's the only time I actually succumbed to something, the patriarchal system. I was persuaded that it would be good for my children to be illegitimate, so I married, and lived to regret it, really. But anyway, yeah, so yeah, I didn't follow the system, and sort of hippie. We were doing all sorts of hippie stuff in London. I came to London in '62, and within a couple of years, you know, we had my neighbors were doing all night drumming and tai chi and acupressure and acupuncture and massage and all sorts of you know, interesting things that were nobody'd ever heard of. Yoga. I taught myself yoga from a book, age 17, and yeah, and nobody had ever heard of yoga. There weren't any yoga studios. There was no yoga clothing. There were no yoga practices you could get on. No, you know, nothing at all. So I taught myself from yoga from a classic Penguin book that somebody had written in the 30s, I think. Yeah. How the rise of the matriarchy, and what you referred to is the work that I've been doing in the last few years, is very much to do with the oppressed feminine, the misrepresented, maligned, dismissed, powerful feminine. And I see this as a movement, a global movement. Now we're seeing, you know, Black Lives Matter. It's largely the women who are bringing this forward. Women are upfront and important in every sphere now, and it's not just because we are on the silver tent. You know, everywhere you look, there are women in the front of the podiums, yeah, almost everywhere, not quite everywhere. But the work that I've been doing very much to do with this is, and I see it manifesting now, is the patriarchal system that oppressed Persephone and Demeter and also Mary Magdalene. And I based my retreats in the last several years around the Magdalene, actually. I think I was doing a lot of retreats every year in the Languedoc, the south of France, and exactly where she hangs out. And there's stories about her and the other stories about her, and you can believe what you like. But the evidence shows that she ended up there preaching and was a high priestess in her own right. That's the evidence that's shown up. Of course, it's only recently that people have woken up to that, and she was sanctified by the Vatican about 3 or 4 years ago, I think. She wasn't a saint up to then. Interesting. So there's that. And then Persephone, the myth of Demeter and Persephone, is the capture and the taking down into the unconscious, into the dark, of the rising young feminine. And I think this is very pertinent to what's happening now on the planet. How we've treated the planet is all in that symbolism as well. And I'm quite a warrior for the ecology and for the planet, as you may have spotted. So what happened with Demeter, with Persephone, where her mother was the goddess of the harvest. The Roman name for her is Ceres, Ceres, from which we get cereal. So cereal, Cereal, right? And that's the grain. It's almost always grain, a cereal. And Demeter was the goddess of the harvest and of flowers and fruit. And her daughter was captured and taken away, and Demeter, in her grief, swore famine on the planet. After searching for a long time for her daughter, getting nowhere, nobody could tell her where the daughter was. She wreaked famine on the planet, and people began to starve. And this is what caused the patriarchy to sit up and take notice. And Zeus, the god, who paying no attention to his offspring or not offspring or niece or whatever relationship, the Greek gods they were all incestuous. whatever relations he had with her, he was taking absolutely no notice of the feminine that had been taken down and oppressed and shut away and taken away from her mother. And I think this is still so strong, it's so relevant now. And eventually he prevailed upon to send Mercury, the messenger, down to Hades, down to the underworld. Now, Hades is the brother of Zeus, and Neptune is Poseidon is the brother, and they're three brothers of the ocean, the sky, and the earth, and the underworld. And Hades' job was to look after the souls of the departed. Persephone became his wife and the queen of the underworld, and that was her. She came to love him. Yeah, and so I'm rambling a bit, but no, the myth of the pomegranate seeds are quite significant in this story, because after a long, long time, Mercury came. Hades agreed to send Persephone back to her mother, but he said, "You've been here such a long time and you haven't eaten, my darling. Please have something to eat before you go back." And he gave her pomegranate seeds, 6 pomegranate seeds. And she was grateful, and she was so pleased, and she knew she was going back to see her mother, and she ate the pomegranate seeds with great pleasure. And then she went up back. Hades escorted her back onto the surface of the earth, and she was reunited with her mother with great joy. But she'd eaten 6 of the pomegranate seeds, and that meant that she had to go back. If you eat in the underworld, you have to go back. So that's why we have 6 months of winter and 6 months of summer.
Oh, wow. Wow. And there I was just thinking he wasn't very generous. Only 6 pomegranate seeds didn't sound very much to me.
He was kind. He didn't want to lose her, but he didn't want her to be unhappy. So he found a balance. And I love that, the balance. And balance is a buzzword for me. It's been a buzzword for quite a while now, for lots of different reasons. So I've got in my flask, my treasure little travel flask, I've got a tea bag called Balance. And balance is what we need right now. And what's happening in the world is that the massive energy has gone swoosh towards the feminine, and it's gone, oh, and it's going, oh, and it's going all over the place and growling and shouting and all of that stuff. But we're going to have to find a balance. We can't just stop having men, yet. No, I'm being mischievous, but yeah, so balance is a key word, and I think this is what I'm aiming for really in my life as well. More balance. And yes, I've been extremely busy and running around the planet and going here and there and everywhere and having a wonderful time and making lots of new friends actually in other countries, which I love, absolutely love. Yes, but I also love to be at home, and I'm also looking to find a way to do that in a way that's balanced for me. And I'm leaving London. So
yes, that's going to be a big new adventure, like you say. So you talk about when you were younger being kind of instrumental in this rise of the feminine, and now you talk about how it's like the energy is going from the masculine to the feminine too far, and that we need to bring it back to a kind of balance. And how do you approach that in your life, but also in the work that you do? Is that something that you work with people on, creating that balance?
I do. And oddly enough, when I first started being a therapist, I was about 40 years ago now. I'm a psychotherapist, a transpersonal integrative psychotherapist. And before that, I was teaching a form of peer counseling, co-counseling for 12 years in adult education. And before that, I was doing all sorts of other things, odd things that we did around Belsize Park in those days. Like, all the alternative things that are now mainstream were happening in people's private living rooms in Belsize Park.
I lived there.
Did you?
Probably when you were there.
Yes. You probably went to school with one of my daughter's schoolmates.
Possibly. I was at Camden.
Yeah. I think I knew some girls who were at Camden. Anyway, what was I about to say? This is one of the things of getting to be 84. I forget what I was about to say. what was it? Balance. We're talking about balance and finding a balance and the swoosh of power of attention toward the feminine. What was I going to say about that? Was something else.
I asked you if you worked with women, rather you worked with
Oh,
people
yeah.
to help create balance.
Yes. So all of my practice, when I first started my practice, I had preponderantly young men at the age of 27, 28, 29, their first Saturn return would come to psychotherapy. And I had a client, quite a big client load then, because there weren't so many therapists around. Even though I was quite new at it, I had a good clientele, and at least half, probably 60% of my clients were men. And I still love to work with men. I do supervision. I have male supervisees. I counsel men, work with men. I haven't run a retreat for men lately. I have lots of men wanting to work with me on certain aspects of a physical being as well, which is fine. I've got a group to do with digestion on Facebook, which is quite a good thing to do. What else? Yeah, I think, I love men. I like men. And what I've discovered in my travels, and especially in Greece, I've got lots of young men being friends with me. Just friends. I'll tell you a lovely little story. We're running out of time soon, so
No, we're fine. We're fine.
We started at 4, didn't we? How long have we got? Till
Still
5
fine.
o'clock? Okay,
Fine.
good. So I have a lovely little story the day I was leaving Greece. This time was on Saturday. I was flying out on Saturday. And I'd moved from a friend's room, which was not air conditioned, into a hotel room, a very wonderful little hotel, very, very cheap. I was so lucky to get a room for a night. But the breakfast was abysmal. And I've been doing, it was awful. I've been doing a protocol where I'm trying to cleanse my digestive tract because it got very upset last year and it's still not quite right. So I've been trying to modify what I'm eating and not eat much in the way of wheat. Everything for breakfast was wheat. The only thing they cooked was a toasted cheese sandwich. That was wheat. And a cake and some slices of bread and some biscuits. I wanted a boiled egg. It's like, no, can't do that. So I went in before I had to I had a taxi coming to pick me up. I treated myself. And also I got the wonderful taxi driver twice, the same guy. We become best friends, honestly. And it's not fake. I can tell when things are a bit tourist oriented. I'm not a tourist. I don't behave like a tourist. So I had this wonderful hour and a half ride with the Stratos, he's called, like Stratos. And we became best friends. We talked about politics, vaccination, families, the world, the situation, and we had this lovely conversation. Anyway, so I got the same driver to take me to the airport, and I had to pay half fare because he was going to pick somebody up, and he asked to do this run with me. And the second ride I had with him to the airport was very peaceful and quiet. We hardly spoke at all. And I just said to him before we got there, I said, I could hang out with you all day. He said, me too, And when I got out of the cab and put my suitcase down, he gave me a massive great hug, a proper bear hug, I said, I think we're going to be friends. Yeah, we are. And, people are like that. Well, we'll see. Proof is in the pudding, but, but there are quite a lot of people that I meet. And the anecdote I was going to tell you was that before the taxi came, I had a little window of time and I went out into the street to see if I could find some tomatoes and some cucumbers for something fresh to eat before I got on the plane. And there were no shops at all, but there was a hat shop. So I went and browsed the hats and I thought, I want another hat. I've got a hat thing, as you know. I'm a hat person. So the summer hat that I was wearing all the time in Greece wasn't quite right. By the end of it, I wanted another hat. I was browsing the hats and they were all polyester or, So I asked the guy, have you got any raffia? He said, yeah, but come across to the shop, just across the alley. Went into the shop, had a stacks, hats all stacked up all the way up to the ceiling. Wonderful hats, lots of them wonderful, quite dressy ones, you know. Anyway, it said, no, that won't do. No. Have you got raffia? Well, yeah, but have a look at this. He said, this is seaweed. I said, you've sold it to me. So we had a good chat. I said, I love seaweed. And we had a bit of a conversation. I said, what's your name? Before I left, I said, what's your name? He said, Apostolos. I said, oh, you're the second Apostolos I know. I've been staying with Apostolos in Laukari, which is the place I love to go, with the orange groves, where you get your wonderful room in the orange groves, and the beach is just two minutes away. Swim in the harbour, beautiful little sea, clean and beautiful. It's lovely there. It's my favorite, one of my very favorite places in the whole world. And it's difficult to get to. Driving, you have to go a very windy, difficult road. There's more stories I could put in here, but oh yeah, I had to call a low loader to take the car I had borrowed out of this village over the mountain to get the gear lever fixed, because it gave up on me, which is why I had the taxi, why I got the wonderful taxi driver. So everything that was awful brought something wonderful with it. So that's how I got the taxi driver. But Apostolis is the name of the owner of this very, very eccentric hotel right on the harbour. And I posted some pictures, you may have seen them, looking down from the table straight down into the water.
Oh, wow. No, I don't remember.
And little children swimming in the harbour, having fun, you know, by themselves. Children so safe, you know, and so confident, and jumping off rocks into the water. 2 little girls were playing down there, going, "Mommy," you know. And I posted 4 pictures. I think I said, just look at this. And I posted my meze, the best meze I've had. A picture of meze is a Greek food with a glass of tsiporo and a glass of water, and then looking out towards the sea just there. And I posted a picture of that. That's Apostolis Hotel. So when this hat man said his name was Apostolis, and I said, oh, I've just come from Laukari, the hotel Apostolis. He said, oh, actually, my kids are at school with his kids. So, you know, connections are being made everywhere I go. I just love it. I love it. And I'm so tempted to try and find a place in Greece.
Yeah, that sounds like it would suit you amazingly well. But if I could just like go back to this, like the rise of the feminine.
Yeah, sorry. But this is all to do with it. Well, here I am at 84. You know, I've got men loving to be friends with me. This is the rise of the feminine. You know, I'm walking around the street and the people smile at me. You know, it's like, And I think what's happened with a lot of older women, they've been sidelined and they feel invisible. And I know that that still happens quite a lot. I don't. I've never been invisible. I was well, no, that may be not true. There was a time when I felt I was getting old and I was becoming invisible. And that passed, actually. I think it was more of a mindset than anything. And when I was pregnant with my first child, and it was illegitimate in 1963, it wasn't really the thing to be pregnant when you were not married. I was very proud to be pregnant. I was so chuffed. I didn't care what anybody thought about me. I would walk around the street and nobody tried to shame me. Nobody. You know, nobody disapproved of me for being pregnant because I was proud. And for me, that's a very good example of how what you put out into the world is fed back to you in different ways, but quite subtly, but sometimes very in your face as well. So don't become invisible. You know, I think don't be invisible.
But you didn't fight it, did you? You didn't think, oh, I'm feeling invisible, I've got to do something about it. No. It feels more internalized than that to me.
Yeah.
More an intuitive kind of heart-based.
I'm just interested. I'm so interested in people. I'm interested in the world. I'm very active politically. I'm active ecologically. I'm socially quite reasonably active. I have a big family as well who keep me on my toes. My granddaughter's insisted on coming to stay with me this week, so she's yeah. And another one is jostling for position to come and stay with me, and another one has just been to Greece to stay with me. And you know, I've got 8 grandchildren, and I love them all to bits. So I'm lucky in that. My kids, my kids encourage me. My son, I've ticked my son off because he said, when I started doing this dentistry in Greece, he said, "Who is this dentist anyway? What are, you know, what's his qualifications? And, oh, you know, where's he come from? And why are you going to a dentist? And, you know, I'm going to check him out. What's his name?" So like, actually, son, his name is Ben. You're insulting me by questioning my judgment. Stop it. So he did. He came to join me in Greece for a week, actually, in March. I was there. It was bitterly cold, but we had a wonderful week together. And he didn't even ask to meet the dentist.
I was going to ask if he'd met.
Yeah.
You've got such a great way of approaching life and flowing through life, and with this confidence just to be your natural self. And I'm wondering, I guess, what tips you can give to those of us, not necessarily just women over 50, but maybe women in general, about how can we be part of the rise of the feminine, if there's anything that we have to do, and how can we be more in tune with ourselves, I guess.
I'm not sure it's a conscious thing, actually. I have a feeling that it's something that's not tangible. I couldn't put into words exactly how it happens, but I can give you an example, and it happens very often in TK Maxx. I love TK Maxx, and I run a dream group, as you know, on a weekly dream group, and I've been working with dreams for a long time now. But when I went into TK Maxx a few weeks ago, I was looking for a sleep mask, because I was going camping, and I've got an old airline one with the elastics all gone. So I was looking for a sleep mask. I couldn't find one. Anyway, so I went back to TK Maxx because I'm going camping again in a week's time. And I walked into TK Maxx, and I walked around the counter where they've got toiletries, and they've got a little section there of you know, bandeaus and hair things and stuff. And what I found on there was a mask, and it's black satin, and printed in gold on the mask is Dreamer. Now my intuition took me there. It happens again and again. I wanted some hydrangeas. I put my house on the market. It was a massive effort to get all the junk. I won't show you the junk piles that are around. Massive. I've got masses and masses of stuff that I've inherited and bought and haven't got rid of. And you know, I've got to get rid of at least 50% of my possessions. But anyway, so well, oh gosh, I've lost it again.
I'm asking your intuition. Oh, hydrangeas for the house. That was it.
Hydrangeas. Yeah, I wanted hydrangeas. The front garden. Oh, in the drought earlier this year, they had died, and I wanted them replaced. So was there a drought earlier this year? Or was that last year? This is what time's done, isn't it? But there was a big drought, and everything died. My grandson was here and didn't water the plants, so a lot of those died. And then something else happened, and my hydrangeas, my beautiful hydrangeas in the little front garden died. So I needed hydrangeas, and I thought, I know they'll have them in Do It All in Wood Green. I'm going to find hydrangeas, and it was in the heat wave, and I knew I was going to find hydrangeas to rescue. And walked in. On the very first counter on my left, as I walked in, there's a big shelf covered with hydrangeas, all going, help. So I got 3 and took them home. Yeah.
So is
That's-
that, do you think that's a big key then, to be really plugged into our own intuition, that
Yes.
that is what helps the rise of the feminine?
I think just do what you feel like doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't a conscious, with the hydrangeas, I knew I had to go and get them, and I knew where they were, and I knew they would be there, and they were. Now, I don't know how that happened. I mean, I know somebody would say, well, you manifested that. You created that. I don't know. I think it's probably a combination, collaboration between various forces, including myself, of the universe. And I feel increasingly that I've got this numbers thing. I won't go into details about that.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
I could show you my phone screen. It's absolutely crammed with numbers. The numbers are always at a change of something. Always. Every time a double number comes up, a repetitive number like 3322 or 1111 or 1234 sometimes, but mostly the repeated numbers. The double numbers or the fourple numbers. Fourple. Fourple numbers are like that. And they come at a change of thinking. They always come at a change of thinking. So I sat down for breakfast and I had a thought, and immediately a number comes up because I was thinking about grief or swimming or something. I don't know what it was, but it's a change in my thought process or a change in activity. It's when I stop doing something, start doing something else every single time. Largely, it's a change in activity. Sometimes it is a change in my thinking process, or an idea comes into my head and a number will pop up. And that gives me the feeling that the universe has my back. And I don't understand what it is, or why it is, or what it's doing, but it's always there now. And the universe has my back, and that's a good feeling. So I'm jumping off. I do the tarot cards, and I've had an amazing, unusual run of moon cards. I get a moon card sent to me every day. To pick a card every day, and every time it's absolutely spot on. And the Fool came up. Like, what am I doing? Stepping into the void. The Fool tarot is on the edge of a precipice. He's got head in the air, got his little packet on his back. He got a little white dog. And I thought of you with a little white dog. Anyway, stepping off into the void, and is he trusting? Is he foolish? Is he an idiot? Or head in the air idiot? Or is he a master and a wise master? So I'm feeling a little bit, either those, one of those could be true. I don't know where I'm going to live. I have some ideas, but I've no idea where I'm going,
But you're just going with that flow and prompted by that, I guess, that urge to move, or that, I don't know. What does it feel like to you?
I've been thinking about that. Why do I want to move? Because I think my trip to Greece, there was about 3 or 4 years ago, I was driving up the bay. It's one of the most beautiful places I've been in the world, and driving up the coast road. And there's a massive bay. It's a huge bay. It's several kilometers across. And it's a great, great natural harbor. And it's the second largest port in Greece. So that means quite a lot. And but I was driving up in sort of, I don't know, early evening, I think. And the evening light was so incredibly beautiful, with the mountain purple and the sea green and blue, and the other mountains that were in the mist in the background, and just astonishing colors. And I had this conscious thing, I want to live somewhere beautiful, overlooking water. So that has decided me now. Whatever time I've got left, I want to live somewhere beautiful, overlooking water. So that kind of, it puts a sort of framework around what I'm going to look at.
It's lovely to get something that feels really pristine, like that view, and make a decision from there. Like, do you ever find you're thinking, am I mad? Or is it just like, no, it's really clear, that's what you'd love, that's what you're going for?
Well, one of the things, we've only got a couple of minutes left. One of the things I wanted to say is the reason I've been going to Greece such a lot is because 3 years ago, I was 81, around about that time, I had a voice. It's only the second time in my life I've heard a male voice. a voice of any kind. The first one was a kind of nonsense. I was a bit stressed and overworking. I didn't pay much attention to that. But this one, a male voice out of nowhere, kind of ordinary, nice male voice, said casually, I wasn't thinking about anything at all, "You got another 20 years." And I thought, oh, okay, I can do that. Okay, thanks. Very casual. Astonishing. I thought, well, I'm going to be over 101. And what with the famines and the food shortages and the, because at that time there were no toilet paper or wheat products on the shelves in the supermarket. I thought, I don't want to be running around. I don't want toothache, so I better get my teeth done. So I've had this. Yeah, I've got, my whole mouth has been amazing with this dentist in Greece. So I've had to go back lots and lots and lots of times, and I've got to go back again in 2 weeks.
Blast.
Well, it is a bit of a squeeze, actually. I'd as soon stay home now, but there's a professor coming from Romania to do something in my mouth, so I have to be there. That's a treatment I get in Greece, honestly.
I know. No, I think I might be following you out there at some point soon, and following your plan with teeth. There's so much to talk about, isn't there, Tamara? And I know that the retreats that you run in Italy,
yes,
they're specifically for women, I think, aren't they?
I'm not sure. I quite like to do one for men as well, mixed one.
But if people are drawn to exploring more with you, whether that's on a one-to-one or a retreat or something like that, how can they easily get in touch with you?
Oh, I have a website. I have I've been ignoring my website actually for the last couple of years. I haven't done anything much to it at all, which is neglectful of me. And I probably should get that activated again when I find the time to sit down and do it. I used to do it myself. I've kind of forgotten the art of website construction. Anyway, I will have to get somebody to do it. So I have an email address. I have a website. My website is, you can Google me. You find loads and loads of references. There's not many Tamara Alferoffs in the world. Really, there aren't. I don't know another one.
There couldn't possibly be, Tamara.
It Tamara-Alferoff.com, my website.
Brilliant. Well, they can find you on Facebook.
Absolutely, find me on Facebook, find me on WhatsApp, find me on Messenger. You can find me on Telegram, which is a good way to communicate. And also, I'm staffing and camping at Camp Out in 10 days. I think we start in 10 days, or 2 weeks in Oxfordshire. So Braziers, lovely venue, Braziers. So people are welcome to join me there. And I'm going to set up a little sort of counselling area and wellness area there as well. So if you want to come and find me in person, but yeah, I don't do much work in person at my practice now. It's almost all online. Pretty much online. So,
and of course, just before we finish, we experienced you held a fantastic group doing the work of Byron Katie.
Yes,
and I was the kind of guinea pig.
You were, weren't you?
And
yes.
It was just phenomenal. I've never experienced anything like that before. I'm not that before. I have experienced different things, but I hadn't experienced the work of Byron Katie, and I was absolutely blown away by it, and was really wonderful. So I know that I recommend what you do, and
well, you dived right in. Yes.
Yeah. Getting used to that now. So Tamara, thank you so very much for being with us today. I really, really appreciate you being here, the stories you've told us, the wisdom that you've shared, and really just love your presence in the Silver Tent, in Silver Synergy, and in my life, really. So just really, I feel very privileged to know you.
I feel privileged to know you too, Francesca, and I'm so grateful for your presence and your inventiveness and your curiosity, and yeah,
Oh,
really, yeah. I have to say, I love women too. You know, it was all about how I'm getting along with men. Most of it, you know, the patriarchal system, finding balance. But yes, I'm really enjoying everybody at the moment. So many people, just wonderful people. You see the wonderfulness in people, they respond.
yes. Yes. I love that.
Mm,
I love that. I think that's a beautiful, profound truth and a
mm,
wonderful place to complete our interview. Thank you
yeah,
so much,
yeah.
Tamara. Lots
Mm,
and lots of love.
mm.
Thank you.
Bye.
I think I finished it. So I'm going to close the Zoom
They're
now.
still recording.
I'm still recording. I'm going to close that down too. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Mm.